Okay, welcome to Impactful Resumes and Cover Letters. I am Dr. Lisa Andrews, Director of Integrated Career Development here at the School of Continuing Studies. I'm also a certified Clifton Strengths coach. Let me also explain the letters behind my name. Of course, we all know PhD stands for Profusely High Debt. CCC is a certification as well as CMCS from the National Career Development Association, of which I am a member. CCC is Certified Career Counselor. CMCS is Certified Master of Career Services. So now that we've gotten all the housekeeping out of the way, let's get started. So what is the purpose of a resume? And it really has three main purposes. The first purpose of a resume is to provide a brief summary of your accomplishments, but it's not everything you've ever done. So unless we're talking about a federal resume, your resume should be fairly brief with telegraphic language and brief in terms of the number of pages as well, which I will get into. So again, it's just something to introduce yourself to the employer, and it's not an exhaustive personal history. Also, as I mentioned a second ago, the purpose is to pique the employer's interest for an interview. So the resume gets you the interview gets you the job. So in future weeks, I will be having an interviewing workshop. So this week we're focusing on piquing the employer's interest to get you to that interview. And it also communicates your brand. So it really represents you. So you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward so that employers can really get a good picture of who you are. Okay, so you may have heard that employers are now using ATSs or applicant tracking systems. So we want to make sure that your resume gets past the ATS and into the hands of someone that has actual eyes who is going to read it. However, most employers are still just glancing at resumes for about 30 seconds or less. They are really not reading them unless they decide to forward you to the interview stage, in which case they will read it in a lot more detail because they will use it as a jumping board in order to ask you questions during the interview. So here are some tips as to how to get past that applicant tracking system and get to an actual employer. First, you really want the resume to be one page. It can possibly be more if there are significant years of experience, but they must be full pages. So you don't want to have a one-page resume and then sort of just a quarter a page on the next page, a paragraph or so. You want it to be, if it's going to be 2 pages, it should be 2 full pages. And again, employers are really just glancing at resumes. They are not reading them. So 1 page is really preferable. This will change if it is a federal resume. Federal resumes can be 6, 7, 10, 15 pages, because truly it does have to be everything you've ever done. But for a traditional corporate resume, it should really be just 1 page. Also, and this kind of goes without saying, but it really should be error-free. So the resume, in the same way that a cover letter is a writing sample, in a way it is a writing sample, but more than that, it shows the employer that you have attention to detail. So if you give them a resume with a ton of errors on it, spelling errors, usage errors, and so forth, the employer is just going to think, wow, this person really did not take the time to review this. They don't have good attention to detail. We really want someone that has attention to detail and that would submit an error-free resume. So we're really just going to pass them by. So must be error-free. Also, and this is really important in terms of getting past that ATS, that applicant tracking system, is no special formatting in Microsoft Word. So for example, no columns, no tables, no pictures, especially no pictures of yourself. That's from the 1970s. No graphics, no lines across the page, no tables, and no headers or footers. If you want something at the top or the bottom, you have to physically type it in. You cannot use the header footer function in Microsoft Word. All of these things throw off the ATS. I would say especially columns and tables. So for those of you who think, oh, I've seen some really cool formats online with resumes with lots of graphics and colors and different fonts and different sort of boxes of information, these are not going to get through the ATS. They may sort of look okay on paper, but the reality is employers just want a really straightforward vanilla resume. They're not looking for mint chocolate chip. Also, you want it in a .doc format and not a PDF unless it is requested. Again, PDFs are not able to be read by ATS systems. You also want a simple or a classic font. Sans serif fonts tend to be more easily read online and by ATS systems. And for a list of sans serif fonts, just Google sans serif fonts and you'll be able to find the most popular. So if you want to divide something as opposed to using a line or any other type of graphics, you want to use white space. So just use the Enter key to delineate different sections if you want to create space. Also, keywords, 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 because the ATS is programmed to look for certain keywords. Now, I have after here with restraint. The reason I'm saying that is because I am not an advocate as a career coach for having a different resume for each job. I know there are coaches out there who do tell people that, but there are just as many of us in the other camp that say you don't have to have a different resume for each job. Now, you do have to have a different cover letter for each job. That is for certain. But in terms of resumes, yes, you want to have as many keywords as possible that you can pull from job descriptions. However, if you think about it, when you're applying for jobs, you're really applying for sort of a group of jobs or a sector of jobs. And so those jobs will have a lot of commonalities between them in terms of keywords. So no need to look at all 20 jobs you're applying for, let's say, and pull every keyword from them. Rather, you should kind of group them and see what the most popular keywords are and try to use them. Also, your resume should be in third person, so no I statements whatsoever. Even if you're doing a professional summary, it should be in the third person. Also, have what I call a resume chop document. And what this is once you've created your first resume, after that, you should have a separate document where whatever changes you make to that resume or items you take off that resume or chop from it, put them in that chop document. That way, if you did want to later put them back on, you will always have it. And you won't have to worry about, ooh, which version of my resume did I use and that kind of thing. In the alternative, you can save each resume by date. But I recommend this chop document. It just kind of makes it easy to see what you've taken off the document so that you can easily put it back on. So the sections of your resume, you'll always have contact information, obviously, education and certifications, experience, professional affiliations, interests, skills, technical and language, and some optional categories include professional summary, conference presentations, and awards. Now, I have listed them this way because they tend to be the order in which you want them to go. Now, in terms of education and certifications, some people put their education and certifications at the very bottom, and that is fine too. Others want to kind of emphasize their education and certifications, so they put it at the top. For example, those who have taken one of our certifications and want to make a career change, they will put that education and certification at the top so that the employer can see, oh, even though they don't have experience in the field necessarily, they do have a certification and they can see that right away. So let's break these down. I've listed my contact information here. So you notice, and also note that this is very valuable real estate, the very top of your resume, and it's the first thing people are going to look at. So While you want it to include all of the pertinent information, you don't want to take up a lot of room because you want to save that room for other things on the resume. So be as brief as possible. Now, because this is a PowerPoint, I made the font quite large. But what I recommend is having your contact information all on one line. Have your name, city, state, one telephone number, email, and your LinkedIn profile. Hopefully that will fit all onto one line if you play with the fonts. Also, notice when it comes to your LinkedIn profile, you want to use a customized URL. So you can see mine here is Dr. Lisa Andrews. LinkedIn will assign you a URL, but it is generally long and drawn out with lots of numbers and letters and kind of unintelligible. There is a way to customize your LinkedIn URL, and I want you to do that so that it reflects something that's a little bit easier to read and a little bit easy to remember. Now, as you know, I have a lot of letters behind my name. However, there are certain letters that do not qualify as titles and should not be placed behind your name. And these include MS, MA, and MBA. These are degrees, but they are not titles. A PhD is a degree, but it also gives you a title. Similarly, something like Esquire or CPA. These are things that become titles. So they are eligible to be placed behind your name, but an MS, an MA, an MBA, while impressive, are not titles, so they should not be placed behind your name. I've listed here PMP, Project Management Professional. Many of you out there may be one of these. That is also acceptable to place behind your name. You've earned that designation. Another is CFP, which is Certified Financial Planner. That one also you can place behind your name. But also note you want to give it the proper credit. So with PMP, you need to use the registered trademark. With CFP, also registered trademark, copyright, that kind of thing. You want to pay attention to that. You can go to your certifying body's website to see the actual usage, the proper usage guides. So your education section, you want to go reverse chronological order. So you want to list your certification first, your certificate first, go backwards, master's degree, bachelor's degree. So everything in reverse chronological order. Now notice what I've done here though, and this is not how you should list it on your resume, but I've underlined an italicized certificate in data analytics. This is because there's a difference between certificate and certification. What you're earning from Georgetown is a certificate. It's not a certification. A certification would be something like a PMP, for example. That's a certification. It is not a certificate. So a certification certifies you, such as me with my CCC, my Certified Career Counselor. A certificate is a quasi degree. And so it is listed as certificate and not certification. Hopefully that makes sense. The next section is your experience section, and the spacing is a little bit off here. You don't want to double space really between your categories, but I've listed, you want to list your business name and location, your title, and all of your dates should be right justified. So all of them should be out on the right-hand margin in alignment with each other. And it is okay to use bullets. You want your bullet to follow the action verb, task, and result pattern. So this one begins with analyzed, and you want to make sure you use different action verbs for each power statement or bullet statement. You don't want to reuse the same verbs over and over again. And you can Google lists of synonyms or lists of verbs so that you can make sure that you are using different verbs for each power statement. Then you want to go with your task and then your result. And in terms of result, ask yourself, so what? So for example, here, the result is saving company $100 million in lost revenues in 6 months. That's a great so what. So you're starting with your strong action verb, you're talking about the tasks, and you're ending with your result. Notice numbers, percentages, dollar amounts, timeframes, very impactful. They jump off the page. Think about someone glancing at a resume for 30 seconds. What's going to stand out? Not all those words, numbers. And that's going to pique their interest. They're going to want to look closer at that. Also, go through your resume and eliminate every the. The should never be on a resume. It's more professional to take out the, which is an extraneous word on your resume. So it should be sort of telegraphic language. It's not perfect English. Now, as far as these bullet statements go, I've indicated 3 different possibilities here. So there are duties, skills developed, and then accomplishments. And as you can see here, we have the weakest, which would be duties, analyze financial statements. That's okay. A little better, analyze financial statements using Excel. So you're talking about the skills you've developed. But the best is the one I had on the last page, which talks about the action, the task, and the result. So you always want to say to yourself, so what? So analyze financial statements, so what? Analyze financial statements using Excel, so what? Make sure you are really building out those bullet statements so that they are accomplishment focused. So some things you can use to brainstorm your bullets include, what goals did I contribute to, or what value did I add? Did this work save time, money, increase customer satisfaction, design or improve a process, a policy, and so on? Did I achieve more with less? Did I complete something ahead of schedule or under budget? Did I receive a promotion or recognition during my employment? And did I consistently maintain or hit above personal or company goals, let's say sales goals, for example? So again, that's so what question. But you can brainstorm sort of, how can I really not just list sort of basic tasks and things that are basic duties of the job, but what were my real accomplishments? What were the big takeaways from my time with that company? Optional, professional associations, any kind of national associations, memberships, especially great when you've held any kind of titles or like a chair of a committee and that kind of thing. And also you want to indicate your dates of membership. Some people only keep professional associations on there if they are a current membership. Others list all professional associations they've been involved with in the past. It's really kind of personal preference. The skills category. So in your skills category, you want to have both technical and any language skills if you have them outside of your first language, or outside of English, since we're in the US, will be English centric. So technical skills, you want to indicate any software and your proficiency level. So you don't just want to say Microsoft Excel, because that may be that you've opened it one time, but you would want to say expert so that they know what your proficiency is. Similarly, SQL, proficient, Tableau, beginner. So be specific. In addition, languages. So if your native language is Chinese, you want to say that, but also then say English fluent, okay? And then of course, German, you can use conversational. These are all examples. So native, fluent, conversational. You can also use beginner. Interest. So there's a couple of schools of thought on including interest on your resume. I personally like them. I know a lot of coaches that do, because they're great interview conversation starters or icebreakers, and it really shows you're kind of a well-rounded or a whole person. And these should go at the very, very bottom of the resume. And again, when someone's scanning the resume, that'll be the last thing they see. And again, it may spark their interest or spark their curiosity. And it might be something they want to know more about. You know, it also tells you something about the person. So for example, one of my interests on my resume is certified scuba diver. Kind of unusual, kind of a risk taker. So it tells something about me to the employer that's reading it. So let's move on to the cover letter. Now, there are a lot of reasons cover letters are a good idea. to include. Like I said at the very beginning, the resume gets you the interview, but the cover letter piques the employer's interest to read the resume. So it's really important to have a really strong cover letter because that's what's going to get you to the resume, the employer to the resume. What it's supposed to do is communicate qualifications, motivation, and fit. These are the three things that employers are hiring for: qualifications, motivation, and fit. Now, it's not always required, but it is recommended. So if you have the option of doing a cover letter, I always say to do one. Of course, if it's asking you not to submit one, you want to follow directions. But if it gives you the option, I would do it. Now, it should expand upon the resume, but not restate it. So these are, of course, paragraphs. So you get to explain briefly a little bit more than on the resume. Also, and I'll talk about this paragraph, must demonstrate research on the company and the position. So again, employers are trying to measure motivation and fit. So you want to demonstrate you know a little bit about the company. Cover letters cannot be one size fits all. You cannot have a cover letter, what I call the deadly word in cover letters, template. No templates when it comes to cover letters. Each one must be customized. Also, best to address it to someone, but and use a title, but avoid sir/madam. That is very 1970s. We don't use sir/madam anymore. You want to, or to whom it may concern, you want to use some kind of title like human resources manager, director of human resources. Do a little research on the company website or on LinkedIn to see if you can find an actual person or if the person's listed in the job description or some kind of title. Again, as with the resume, the cover letter is definitely a writing sample, so it must be error-free. Now, where the resume is kind of that telegraphic language, the cover letter is a true writing sample. So you definitely want it to be well written and error-free. Now, the cover letter is really 4 easy paragraphs. The first paragraph is what you're applying for and how you heard about it. So the first paragraph is really just a couple of sentences. I'm calling it a paragraph because you separate it from the others, but it's really just a couple of sentences. So here's a demonstration. Please find attached my resume to be considered for the data analyst position at Mathematica. I learned about the position via a listing on LinkedIn Jobs. Here you can also name drop. So if you heard about the position from an employee, I would name drop their name. If you made a networking connection and they recommended you, also name drop. Because you don't know who's reading the resume, so you want to make sure if you do have a personal connection that you list it. Paragraph 2 is really kind of the crux of the resume, and this is where customization comes in. What you want to do is really match your skills and experience to the job requirements. So I always tell people that job descriptions are written for people that do not exist. No one is going to have all 20 of the things they list in a job description. That's never going to happen. But if you can at least pick the top 3 specific qualifications from the description and then prove how you demonstrated them, that is going to put you in good stead with the employer. It'll also tell you how qualified you really are for the position if you're applying to an appropriate position. If you really have no experience whatsoever and the job just looks good to you, it's going to be really hard to write that cover letter because there's no way to prove your qualifications. Remember, qualifications, motivation, fit. You want to demonstrate how you have either done this in the past or with your education and your knowledge, you would be able to do it in the future or skills. So you can draw from academic projects, past experience, your own strengths, your own skills, anything that will help you prove that you've done it in the past, or you can demonstrate because of these items, you could do it for them in the future. And you're really trying to set yourself apart or what makes you different. So paragraph 3, this is where you want to demonstrate fit with the company. So you really want to talk to the employer briefly, just a few sentences, on the company culture or values and mission and how it resonates with you. Why are you applying? They're trying to, remember, assess fit. So they want to know why us, why not another company? Now, you can draw from the company website, and most companies will have their mission, their vision, a former annual report you can read to really get a feel for what the organization is doing. Or you can Google the organization, you can look at media articles, news stories you've seen on TV, anything to give you kind of a picture of what the company is like and why you feel you're a good fit for that company. So you're really demonstrating, trying to demonstrate here, fit. Most companies complain that potential employees don't know enough about them when they go into an interview or when they're writing a cover letter. So this is your chance. You're getting insider information, your chance to really demonstrate, yep, you've done your homework, you know about the organization, and it's not just the position that appeals to you, but it's the business itself, and this is why you're applying. And lastly, paragraph 4. And here again, this isn't really a paragraph, it's just a couple of sentences, but you want to thank them for their consideration and, importantly, have a call to action. So you want to state your follow-up plans. So you want to thank them for thank you for your consideration of my application for the data analyst position at Mathematica. I will follow up with you within 2 weeks to ascertain the status of my application. And really, that is the cover letter in 4 easy paragraphs, really 2 and 2, 2 full paragraphs, 2 half paragraphs. And that is the cover letter. So combining the cover letter and the resume, these are your 2 sort of branding documents that are going to get you into that interview room where you can then talk about whatever you want to. Remember, these are just snapshots of what you've done, but anything is fair game once you get into the interview room. It doesn't have to be something that's necessarily on the resume. And when you're in the interview, you can actually state that, well, you know, this isn't on my resume, but I'd really like to tell you about this experience I've done or this accomplishment I had, and so forth. So at this point, I would be glad to stop sharing and take your questions, and I'll stop the recording. But I wanted to give you my link for my appointment link, so you can make a one-on-one appointment with me. You're all entitled to one-on-one coaching with me for being part of SCS. So you just go to my Calendly link, calendly.com/LA851. You can also email me at la851@georgetown.edu. And when I stop sharing, I will also drop that in the chat. So I will stop the recording now.